Hello, Pod Smashers of the Internet, and welcome to another episode of Termite's Buzz, a gaming podcast where your host, me, Termite, runs you through the things I am playing, trophies I'm getting, as well as the current video game industry news, as well as a retro discussion in the back end of the episode. This might be a long episode, y'all. A lot has happened, a lot is going on this week, and a lot of news. And then I have my retro segment where I'm going through video games of the year for the years of 1991 through 1995, which are some pretty sweet years. So I might have a lot to say about those. So strap in. I don't know how long it's going to run. I don't have everything planned as far as time. I just have a list of things I want to talk about in front of me. And research that I have done. I'm coming back from, and I apologize for the late episode, but I went to Charlotte, North Carolina to see Blink-182 live in concert, which is an absolutely legendary weekend I had, and in a very, very high bucket list item that's really, really up there. Like, it's one of those life goals that you can check the box for, and it feels really good. Like, you like platinum trophies, or you like chasing some sort of accomplishment, maybe a championship in some sort of competition, or, for me, like in the running world, I really want to qualify for Boston. That's another one of my life goals. But seeing Blink-182 live was one of the things that has eluded me my whole life. I was too young during the Vans Warped Tour to actually accumulate money to make the trip happen when they were around, but I was watching them on MTV, and when the self-titled album, like the Blink-182 album, had come out, was pretty much like the height of my fandom at their peak, in their prime. And since then, like, Travis Barker had his plane, he's a drummer, had his plane crash, and that kind of put him aside for a while. And then they came back and they recorded an album called Neighborhoods, and that was with the original band, and that was awesome. And I don't know if they toured, but I was unable to, get that to work out to go see them. I don't even know if they went live around then. And then some fallout happened with the band, and Tom DeLonge went off and did his own thing, and he did Angels and Airwaves, which was awesome. But the band was done, and they actually brought in Matt Skiba from Alkaline Trio to replace Tom DeLonge as lead singer, and they came out with 2 more albums, California and Alkaline, or 9. And I love those albums. I followed them when they came out. I've listened to them ad nauseum along with their classic albums, and I never saw them around then, but I wasn't as interested to see them as I was initially because they weren't the original 3. Well, Tom DeLonge was diagnosed with stage 4 lymphoma, and he survived, and he got through it, and the band got back together. They're making a new album, which I cannot wait for. It's not out yet, and they started touring in 2023. Tickets were on sale back in October. I bought tickets immediately, and I chose Charlotte, North Carolina, because it was close to where some really close friends of ours, in fact, when I started this podcast, we were hanging out with them regularly. A friend of the show and home brewer extraordinaire at the time, Jacob and his wife, and my wife and I, we all got babysitters, and we just pretty much, I mean, for lack of a better term, partied for 4 days straight. That sounds a little crazier than we actually were, but we went to breweries, we went out to a nice restaurant, went to the Blink-182 concert, of course, stayed out till 2 a.m, got amazing greasy bar food after the show, super late after drinks. We played it all safe. We had a hotel that was walking distance from the show, so no one had to drive. We Ubered around in some of the places that we went to for dinner and for other breweries. So it was great. We are in our mid-30s, and we are still out having fun, but nobody got sick. Nobody got crazy, and we were responsible parents as we are. We had a blast. Everything was amazing. Like I said, one of those legendary weekends. I also went to the NASCAR Hall of Fame, and that's not a super high bucket list item, but I am a NASCAR fan, so it was super awesome to actually go after hearing about it for so long. And so I took a tour of that. There was a racing simulator, which is video game related, right? It's the iRacing simulator. There's an entire league of iRacing, or it's called iRacing, but it's like e-race. I don't understand what it's called, but there's a whole league that's happening. Like, drivers do this. It's a whole thing. And during the pandemic, the actual NASCAR drivers were using it as a way to continue to get fandom engagement and do races. And I even think they had some points things going on that season. Didn't really follow it too much, but it is pretty sweet that they're using simulator technology to run races and still be able to compete. And you can do that as a regular lay driver like me or you or any other fan of NASCAR can go to the Hall of Fame and drive in the simulator. And so even my two non-NASCAR friends and my wife, who's not a NASCAR fan either, were all like around, but my wife didn't drive on the simulator. The other two friends of mine did. And we had a blast. There was a whole qualifying session, and then you go into the actual race, and they've taken the NASCAR stock cars and gutted them and put TV screens in them, so you're sitting in a race seat, and you're using race pedals, and like the seats move, and not move, but they like vibrate when you get hit or when you hit the wall, and the steering wheel like jerks and has the haptic feedback, and the pedals like respond to if you're hitting the brake too hard, and they go squishy, and if you spin out, like the gas goes to the floor, and you can kind of feel the traction brake. So... And I guess that reveals that I broke traction and spun out a few times. I also got rear-ended by other... The only complaint I have is like there's 16 people that are racing at once, and it's everything from like a 6-year-old through like grandma who just wants to go have a blast. And so you have people that aren't following the directions. Like there's a pace car, you're supposed to take a full pace lap, and someone like sped past the pace car, got yelled at by whoever was the ride operator, which was pretty funny. And then you have like someone slamming into me during the pace lap. I'm like, come on, like I'm following the rules. I'm doing the pace speed, just cruising behind the car in front of me. I'm trying not to hit anyone. So like I had to slam on the brakes and like swerve because someone's not following the line. It was wild. But, so you can't really like gauge how great of a driver you are, but I did have the fastest lap of the 16 people that were racing, and then overall for the whole day, there's a leaderboard that's just live for the entire day. I was in 30th place with my lap time, which I don't think is too bad when there's like thousands of drivers that are churning through there, because 16 new drivers every 5 minutes from open to close is how many there are, so that's a lot. And we were on the back end of the day, so yeah. I'll take 30th place for lap time, given I've never done this before, and there was a bunch of crazy variables and people slamming into me and like wrecking happening all over the track all the time. So it was a blast. We had a great time. Fantastic weekend. I love it. Legendary. Need to recover. So today is a total recovery day. I'm trying to relax and take it easy by installing a cabinet in my kitchen, because that's something we need to do. So there's a whole pantry being put together. That's a whole thing I'm not going to get into, but I'm tired. But had a blast, refreshing, amazing bucket list item checked off to go see Blink-182. The show and the concert was awesome. The set list is everything I dreamed of and more. You can actually go to Spotify and search for like Blink-182 2023 set list. All of the favorites. My personal 2 favorites are Reckless Abandon and Dysentery Gary. They played both of those. They also did Damn It, which is off of their Dude Ranch album. Travis wasn't drumming on that album, but he was drumming this live, so that was pretty sweet. They also played a song off of California called Cynical, and another song called Bored to Death. Both of those were recorded with Matt Skiba singing the main lead, or assist lead, whatever, but now we have Tom DeLonge. So, like, it was the first time to hear him sing those songs, and that was sweet. The seats were fantastic. We were on the second story, looking straight at the band in a basketball arena, so they were a little far away, but we didn't have to stand up because there was no one in front of us. There was a cliff in front of us. We had a little ledge to put our drinks and our phones, and we could just chill and rock out in our seats, and I felt like I could be my full-blown geriatric millennial, rocking out from my seat, so I feel bad for the seat, because that probably took a beating with me moving a lot in it. Had a blast. I just can't say enough how much fun that whole weekend was. Absolutely incredible. But here I am. Time to talk about some video games. With that, what am I playing? Still Final Fantasy 16, but I had a 5 or 4 day hiatus. Like, I didn't bring my PlayStation with me. I was out of town. Didn't get to play it. So since the last time I recorded an episode to now, I may have had 3 days with which there was any time I could have played it. So continuing on, like just moving along, I guess, in the story a little at a time. So there's not really much to report about what I'm playing. The Mario Kart 8 DLC Wave 5 came out while I was on travel, and I did bring my Switch so I could finish that, and I did, and those tracks are cool. My my opinion, my take, whatever, on the whole like Wave DLC packs. They're doubling the size of Mario Kart 8, which is amazing, and they're bringing back these old retro tracks completely redesigned and like redone for a modern audience. Games from like the Game Boy Advance, Mario Kart Super Circuit, from Double Dash, from Mario Kart Wii. I love it. I love to see these tracks resurrected, and there's so much potential here to bring a lot of tracks forward. But they keep throwing in the Mario Kart Tour tracks from the mobile game, and I don't like it. I don't want those tracks. They're modeled after like real world locations. So there's like Sydney, Australia, and Vancouver, New York City. Like, I don't want this in my Mario Kart. I want all of the retro tracks. Remember what y'all did for Smash Bros. When you said everyone is here? I want that. I want every track from every single past Mario Kart game put into, and there was enough room for that. If you move all the Mario Kart Tour stuff, I haven't done the math, but there's so many. Like, every DLC pack has like half of them or more are taken up by Mario Kart Tour tracks, and it's frustrating. So I enjoy the new tracks. There's even like new tracks, like completely brand new. You know, they're not retro and not Mario Kart Tour. And Yoshi's Island was one from Wave 4 that was amazing. And so I want stuff like that. I want retro tracks. Get this Mario Kart Tour garbage out of here. I don't enjoy them at all. It's just like I roll my eyes. I'm like, okay, they exist. It's like Toad's Turnpike over and over again with different location. Toad's Turnpike is amazing. Leave it at that. Bring that one forward and call it a day. I don't need to drive through every city in the world. I don't want to play cheesy upgraded cell phone games. I get it's easy content. Port the track over, maybe up-res the graphics a little and move on. But the graphics and the tracks are actually kind of a thing on the internet, if you ever followed this, but apparently the graphics in the original tracks are really good, and the new ones that are coming out in these remakes, like they're porting forward tracks, and like the Mario Kart Tour ports are all like not as good, and they're being called out for it. So I agree. They should take their time and make good tracks, good content, but when you're doubling the size of like a 8-year-old game, I guess that's maybe 10 years. I don't even know when Mario Kart 8 first came out on the Wii U back in then. But the new one came out on the Switch in 2017, and so they're still adding content to it. My other gripe with that game, and then I'll move on, is that there's characters from non-Mario universes. Like, there's Link, and there's the Squid Kid from Splatoon, and there's a villager from Animal Crossing. I'm like, this isn't Smash Kart. This is not Smash Brothers Kart. This is Mario Kart. I want my Mario characters from Mario universes. And they brought Kamek. That was the big deal. They brought Kamek back. He was actually slated to go in Mario Kart 64 and then was gutted for Donkey Kong. And I remember some of the early preview footage back when the Nintendo 64 was called the Ultra 64. And there was very little Mario Kart 64 footage, but some of the screenshots showed Kamek, and I was very excited to play him. I don't know why. Like, Magic Koopa was always super fun to me. And I was like, oh, well. And now I can play him. But he's a medium character, medium weight, and I play lightweight characters like Toad. So, fun, good. Of course it's worth it. I have the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack service thing, so it didn't cost me anything to play it. So whenever there's new content for Mario Kart 8, I'm going to play it. Speaking of Mario Kart 8, I played that in the backseat of a car being driven around in Charlotte this past weekend as well on the way down to the concert. So, legendary weekend. I just can't even, I gotta move on. So, news. Cyberpunk 2077 reviews are now very positive. And this article comes by way of Video Games Chronicle. CD Projekt Red thanks fans for acknowledging all the hard work the team has put in. So after 2.5 years in that disastrous launch, it's finally good. So Tom Ivan over here posts, over 2.5 years since its disastrous launch, Cyberpunk 2077's Steam user review rating has been upgraded to very positive. At the time of writing, 80% of the 546,249 user reviews for the game are positive, according to Valve. CD Projekt Red Global Community Director Marcin Mamat highlighted the game's upgraded review status in a Twitter post, thanking players for the positive feedback. Cyberpunk 2077 Steam reviews are now sitting at very positive, with 80% of all scores being favorable. Thank you all for acknowledging all the hard work the team has put in over the years since their release. The sci-fi RPG was one of the most highly anticipated games of the last console generation. Things went badly wrong, if you remember, when it arrived in December of 2020. Lots of refunds. It was delisted from the PlayStation Store. Lawsuits alleging misleading investors over the quality of the title. It was at a satisfying level as of June 2021. and that's that. So they really turned that game around for real. Like, it's a solid game now. It's stable. It looks great. It plays great, especially on the modern consoles and PC. They're doing crazy things with ray tracing. They're pushing boundaries. If you have those high-end PC cards that can handle it. So if you haven't had a chance to play Cyberpunk 2077, there is a new expansion coming this September called Phantom Liberty with 30 hours of new content. It's huge. So, or maybe it's 20 hours of new content and it's $30. I don't remember. But I do know that it's definitely 20 hours or more, and it's huge. So I know I want to play that, but I'm going to be busy with other things like Starfield. But I want to replay Cyberpunk on PlayStation 5 because the native PlayStation 5 version is now out. When it first came out, I was playing the PS4 version on PS5, which it had the ability to use the extra hardware to help smooth it out. So I probably had the least bad experience of all of the cyberpunkdom of all the things that was out there. There was a lot of bugginess with the side quests and some of the quest progression, and it was awful because you'd have to redo things, reload saves, and do stuff. Like, there was all these hacks and workarounds online about triggering certain things in order just to make sure you get your stuff. It was annoying. So not having to worry about any of that and just play through the game again could be super, super fun. Cyberpunk was awesome. I thoroughly enjoyed it. My next story is from Insider Gaming, which I don't cite from very often. Grant Taylor Hill says, Sony is investing $2.1 billion in gaming research and development, focusing on live service games. In a report published by Nikkei, it was revealed that Sony intends to pour financial resources into gaming research and development to the tune of $2.13 billion. That's reportedly an investment that's being made before the end of the fiscal year 2024, and it will account for a whopping 40% of Sony's entire R&D spending. Remember, Sony makes TVs, they make speaker systems, they make headphones, they make other electronics, wireless earbuds, etc. They're huge in electronics. 40% of all of their research and development is going into PlayStation. Gaming, rather. That's not specifically PlayStation, but gaming. So that means the other 60% is for TVs and all the other stuff I mentioned. That's crazy. Not only that, but Sony Group has also expressed a desire to pivot towards a model that focuses on more succinctly on live service titles, with Nikkei's article referencing the fact that, quote, Sony itself has yet to make a splash in live service games. For years, PlayStation's bread and butter has been in remarkable single-player exclusives, which have dominated markets globally, but don't typically have much staying power, unless sequels are released, of course. That's partly why, in 2022, Sony stepped up and bought out Bungie for $3.7 billion, recognizing that the minds that brought the world Destiny could offer some... That's a weird way of phrasing that. Recognizing that the minds that brought the world Destiny could offer something unique in the ever-growing market of live service games, which we talked about when that happened. Of course, that's Sony has said many, many times that they're pursuing however many live service games are being made by their first-party studios. And according to the report published by Nikkei.com, Sony plans to allocate a staggering 60% of all PlayStation 5 development spending to live service games exclusively for the year ending in March 2026. It is also stated that there's a grand goal in place to have no fewer than 12 live service games in the PlayStation portfolio within that same timeline. Furthermore, it was explained that Sony Group also has plans to break into the metaverse in a much more meaningful way, exploring avenues made up of extended reality and making use of studios around the world to drive research and development into the space. That is another aspect of this investment. This article here, written by Insider Gaming, of course, is focusing on Sony's desire for live service games. No one wants to hear that. We all love our single-player games. Live service games are a time sink, which as a married full-time working dad, that's impossible. So live service games are fun. I jump in, like Marvel's Avengers, I play it, and I dip out. I didn't do that with... I played The Division. I played The Division 2, but I never beat them. Destiny, played that, beat the core content, and I dipped out. I'm out. I don't got time to play the same game. There's too many games to play. I love other games. I get it. If you're listening to the show, you might feel the same way. I'm not really into live service games. It's not my deal, not my jam. I hope what this means is that the live services don't diminish the quality and the greatness of the single-player games, like God of War Ragnarok and Horizon Forbidden West. Great stuff. I hope that doesn't go away. Last of Us Part 2, Last of Us, of course, Naughty Dog in general, I know they're working on this Last of Us Factions thing, which we talked about before, which is probably being downscaled and like rolled back because it was too ambitious. But what is not highlighted here is 40% of Sony's entire R&D spending. PlayStation VR 2, right? Let's fund studios. Let's figure out what else we can do with VR. I mean, there's so much untapped potential with VR. I've always talked about how awesome it would be if there was some sort of like NASA collaboration with the Mars rover or like the moon stuff we're doing, where you could have like VR trips to live cameras, 360-degree motions, of stuff in space, or like live concerts, big sporting events where you could sit in the audience and like look around and watch a live thing play out. Like that'd be super, super cool in VR. It'd be awesome. Like going to see movies together in theaters, like in the virtual space and the metaverse. So yes, the article here talks as like a little endpoint about researching into the metaverse, but I think the headline of the article should be more about the metaverse and not so much the live service stuff, because no one likes the live service stuff except for those that play all the time, and they're usually not people that listen to shows like this, so it's not for our audience. But if it is, and you're into live service games, let me know, because I'd like to hear about them. I know Apex Legends is killing it, and a lot of people play that, and Call of Duty Warfare, like Modern Warfare, the Warzone, is like crazy. It's very popular, everyone's into it, but not for me. Cool stuff going on there. I just don't want to be a negative Nancy, so I'm excited about the potential for PSVR 2, and I wish it was talked about more. All right, so next, couple of stories regarding the Microsoft and the FTC fight. There was a big breakout news that happened this week, and I will read a couple of articles from The Verge to help discuss that properly. Starting with on July 11th, Microsoft wins FTC fight to buy Activision Blizzard. So that was the big news. Tom Warren over here at The Verge. A California judge is allowing Microsoft to close its acquisition of Activision Blizzard after 5 days of grueling testimony. Microsoft still faces an ongoing antitrust case by the FTC, but Judge Jacqueline Scott Corley has listened to arguments from both the FTC and Microsoft and decided to deny the regulator's request for a preliminary injunction. So if you recall, the entire like FTC versus Microsoft stuff that was going on was just an attempt to get there was a deadline for the 18th. That's tomorrow. They wanted to get that deadline pushed out, so there was more time. That's kind of what this was, which is why it's decided to deny the regulator's request for a preliminary injunction. Right. So, in a ruling submitted today, Judge Corley said the following: Microsoft's acquisition of Activision has been described as the largest in tech history. It deserves scrutiny. That scrutiny has paid off. Microsoft has committed in writing, in public, in court, to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation for 10 years on parity with Xbox. It made an agreement with Nintendo to bring Call of Duty to Switch. It entered several agreements to, for the first time, bring Activision's content to several cloud gaming services. This court's responsibility in this case is narrow. It is to decide if, notwithstanding these current circumstances, the merger should be halted, perhaps even terminated, pending resolution of the FTC administrative action. For the reasons explained, the court finds the FTC has not shown a likelihood it will prevail on its claim this particular vertical merger in this specific industry may substantially lessen competition. To the contrary, the record evidence points to more consumer access to Call of Duty and other Activision content. The motion for a preliminary injunction is therefore denied. So, boom, there it was. Judge Corley has clearly sided with Microsoft on its commitments to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation and Nintendo. Despite the cloud arguments that were talked about before with FTC, Judge Corley took them into consideration in her decision. The court ruling even agrees with Microsoft in theory about Nintendo Switch being part of the console market, but also accepts the FTC can reasonably claim it's not. Judge Corley has also agreed with the FTC that the console market does not include PCs. In a statement following Judge Corley's decision, Microsoft President Brad Smith said the company was, quote, grateful to the court in San Francisco for this quick and thorough decision and hope other jurisdictions will continue working towards a timely resolution. Xbox head Phil Spencer tweeted a reaction: "We're grateful to the court for swiftly deciding in our favor. The evidence showed that Activision Blizzard deal is good for the industry, and the FTC's claims about console switching, multi-game subscription services, and cloud don't reflect the realities of the gaming market." This article is kind of long. I'm not going to read the whole thing. So people are predicting both ways, like, oh, FTC's going to win or FTC's going to not win. Microsoft and Activision are going to merge. It's crazy. I don't know what side of the fence I feel. I don't know how I feel about this. I'm kind of like very leery, and I raise an eyebrow over like merging and acquisitions. We haven't really seen greatness come out of Microsoft's studios since they've been buying things up. So it's that. But like we had a love for Blizzard that was marred by the Hong Kong protests, and Blizzard's response to a Hong Kong protest against humanity, in their fault, and also the sexual abuse allegations and the culture, the bro work culture, leading to a developer's suicide in Blizzard's company under their leadership. And so Microsoft's new leadership could be a turn for the better for the workers of Activision, for those at Blizzard. We also know that Activision is known for extraordinarily gross microtransactions and just taking everything to make it a yearly franchise, and they gut it of all of its heart and make all of this stuff like everything's pay. Like World of Warcraft's expansions have gone down the drain. They have gutted Heroes of the Storm, and like whole esports teams were all laid off. There were exceptions, like the Crash Bandicoot trilogy and Crash Bandicoot 4 and Tony Hawk were all wonderful games that came out of Activision. But for the most part, it's all just Call of Duty camp. Like, that's all it is. And it's all this microtransactions and Battleground stuff. And trying to, there's a term for franchise, yearly, to make everything like a yearly thing. That shouldn't be. So will Microsoft help like steer that? Because Activision's drive is under Bobby Kotick to make money, like crazy amounts of money. But now Microsoft is that, right? There's a whole truckload of cash now coming from Microsoft. It's going to dump into Activision's coffers. So who knows what's going to happen? It's neat that we'll have a bunch of Blizzard games on Game Pass. Like, that's kind of neat. I'll be able to play Diablo 4 on my PC, I assume. And then I'll have the cross-save progression, and I should be able to pick up my character on PS5. So that'll be fun. And if World of Warcraft subscriptions come bundled with Game Pass, that would be kind of fun, too. So I can dabble in World of Warcraft Classic again. Like, that's kind of neat. And then games like maybe Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 could come out along, with 1 and 2. They'll do a 3 and 4. Who knows? The remakes of the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 is my absolute favorite from all of them. So if they remake that, I'm going to be excited. I'm going to be happy, right? And then maybe we'll get more Crash Bandicoot content, This could be good. I don't know. I'm skeptical, though, of just the consolidation of big video game companies getting together. I look at Rare as an example, Rareware, and they've done nothing but Sea of Thieves since Microsoft got them. Where's Viva Pinata? Where's Banjo-Kazooie? That's not nuts and bolts, right? We got the Rare replay. That was cool. We're getting a Perfect Dark remake, but that's not by Rare. So I don't know how I feel about how Microsoft has treated the companies. And we had the big debacle with Redfall, where even Phil Spencer came out and said we didn't treat that acquisition correctly. We did not give the team access to Microsoft's resources. We didn't integrate them properly. We had too much of a hands-off approach to them. But we saw in Microsoft's showcase that all these studios are working on amazing games. Things look up. Like, Microsoft looks like they're steering and riding this ship. And as a Game Pass person, as someone with an Xbox, like, I want to play everything. I want to play all the games, so I don't have the fandom. I prefer PlayStation. I love trophies. That system is very appealing to me, and that's where most of my gaming lies. But I like to have access to everything, so I don't want to be gated away. So exclusivity doesn't really bother me. Starfield being Xbox exclusive is like, I'm going to play the games I want to play, and I will go through the hurdles it takes to get the consoles and the parts that I need to make that happen. And there was a time in my past when I was definitely not I didn't have as much expendable income. Let's put it that way. I would not even come close to saying that I was poor, but we had way less income than we have now. And so I had to scrimp and save and trade in games, but I never missed out on games. If there was ever a game out there I wanted to play, I got access to it sometime eventually. And I think that if you really, really want access to games, you'll figure that out for yourself as well. I mean, I was working on a shoestring budget, and I made it happen. Whether it was like a PC port that was cheap on cdkeys.com, and I had like a bare bones computer that I had built myself with like a graphics card that was used, and like The frame rate wasn't that great, but I could still play the game. Like, I went through the hurdles it takes to get access to the game, and I feel like most gamers, gaming is expensive. If you're already in that world, you could kind of figure it out. I hope. I don't know. But you don't have to have an Xbox, and if there's the Series S. That's the cheapest one. You can find one used for around $200, if not cheaper, depending on how easily someone wants to get rid of it. And you can get a Game Pass subscription, and you can play Blizzard games. And if you want, you have a PC already, you can do Game Pass just right there without even buying an Xbox, and you'll get access to Game Pass on PC, and you'll have all the Blizzard games there. So it doesn't really, to me, it doesn't feel like it's changing too much of the landscape as far as gating games onto a platform because of Game Pass on PC and Xbox. I don't know. I don't know how y'all feel about it. I'd like to know. I'm not super into Call of Duty, but apparently it'll be on PlayStation for the next 10 years. So in 10 years from now, gaming is going to be so different. Nothing is going to be the same at all. We're going to be in like PlayStation 6, and it'll be nuts with cloud gaming and all that going on, that I'm sure they'll broker a new deal, or there might not even be Call of Duty anymore because something new, better from PlayStation's live services will come out, and we'll, chomp it away, eat its lunch. Who knows? So much could happen. So I'm not super bummed or worried about this. But the FTC appealed this to the next day. The Federal Trade Commission is appealing a recent U.S. federal court order that cleared the way for Microsoft to purchase Activision Blizzard. The FTC filed its opposition to Judge Jacqueline Scott Corley's decision, asking for the deal to be paused once more, this time by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Microsoft won the fight with the FTC earlier this week, with a federal judge denying a preliminary injunction and request from the U.S. regulator. The court finds the FTC has not shown a likelihood it will prevail on its claims this particular vertical merger and this specific industry may substantially lessen competition. To the contrary, the record evidence points to more consumer access to Call of Duty and other Activision content. I know I read that in the last article, but that's the verbiage of this new stuff. If the preliminary injunction has been granted, it would have temporarily blocked Microsoft from closing its Activision Blizzard deal until the result of the FTC's own administrative case against the company. That separate legal challenge is still due to commence on August 2nd. Now that the FTC is choosing to appeal Judge Corley's decision, the regulator needs the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals to issue an emergency stay to extend the existing temporary restraining order that is set to expire on Friday the 14th. Okay, I missaid the 18th before. It's the 14th. It's not clear if the appeals court will even rule before the deal deadline on July 18th. I was right about the 18th. I apologize for all that confusion. Potentially leaving the door open for Microsoft to close the Activision Blizzard deal on Monday or Tuesday without a restraining order in place. The FTC makes a series of arguments against the lower court ruling, arguing that the ruling applied the wrong legal standard, relying on government cases seeking permanent injunctions. It erred in saying potential consumer benefits of Xbox Game Pass outweighed the potential for foreclosure of games like Call of Duty appearing on other subscription platforms. It relied too much on Microsoft's agreements to provide games to other cloud services. It missed potential partial foreclosure strategies or ways that Microsoft could degrade the experience of games on other platforms without fully dropping support. It ignored the FTC's evidence about Microsoft's incentives to foreclose access to games. Point 4 there, it missed potential partial foreclosure strategies or ways that Microsoft could degrade the experience of games on other platforms. I didn't really catch that. That's interesting. So yeah, we're getting Call of Duty on PlayStation, but what if it's like some maps? It's not all of it. Or it's like capped at 30 FPS, so it doesn't perform as well. So gamers over there are like at a disadvantage, and they don't want to play it there. They, to incentivize buying it on a Microsoft platform or on PC. That's interesting. Very interesting. The district court's rules make crystal clear that this acquisition is good for both competition and consumers, said Brad Smith, Microsoft's vice chair and president. We're disappointed that the FTC is continuing to pursue what has become a demonstrably weak case, and we will oppose further efforts to delay the ability to move forward. So that's happening. Mike Ybarra, president of Blizzard Entertainment, quipped about the appeal on Twitter, "Your tax dollars at work." Microsoft still needs to resolve the issues of UK's Competition and Markets Authority, that's the CMA, so that's still going on, a UK legal battle, with its acquisition before it can close. After the regulator blocked a deal on cloud concerns earlier this year, both Microsoft and the CMA almost instantly announced that they had agreed to pause their legal battles to negotiate after Judge Corley's ruling on Tuesday. So, and then in a surprise statement on Wednesday, the CMA then warned Microsoft's opportunity to restructure its deal could lead to a new merger investigation, and that talks between the regulator and Microsoft were still at an early stage. So they've already went through a CMA debacle, kind of locked horns over there forever ago. So what they're threatening now is that if Microsoft changes the deal here as a result of the FTC in the Ninth Court of Appeals, whatever happens, then that could then trigger a new engagement with the CMA. It's very complicated. This is like super in the weeds. I'm going to leave it here for now, but all eyes now turn on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals and Microsoft's potential deal with CMA in the UK. So we're not quite there. It's a huge step forward. They won the case, but now that it's being appealed, so they got to win it again. Crazy. Much more fun news, though. We got a Emmy nomination for a video game adaptation, and that is an article over on Variety.com written by Adam B. Vary. Achievement unlocked with nods for Best Drama Series actor Pedro Pascal and actress Bella Ramsey, among others. HBO's Last of Us is the first live-action video game adaptation to earn major awards consideration from a top Hollywood awards body in television or in film. The Last of Us earned a total of 24 nominations in an Inside episode short about the show. It was also nominated. On TV, live-action video game adaptations are practically brand-new phenomenon, starting with Halo for Paramount Plus and Resident Evil for Netflix, both of which debuted in 2022. That landscape is quickly expanding, with shows based on Twisted Metal for Peacock and God of War and Fallout for Amazon Prime, all on the immediate horizon. I don't know when this article was written, July 12th, 5 days ago, but there's a major writer's strike going on in Hollywood right now, so I don't know what that means for Twisted Metal and God of War and Fallout. I'm going to put that on the aside because I don't know anything about that. I just know that there's a whole bunch of writers that are not working and it's causing a big rift in Hollywood. But what I am going to talk about is how awesome and cool that The Last of Us HBO show has Emmy nominations. How cool is that for the validation of video games as an art form, as a storytelling medium in the world of culture and art at large? This is awesome. I'm super excited to see video games hit the Emmys, and it's just nothing but excites me for the future of video game perception. We are not a bunch of neckbeards in our parents' basement wasting time playing video games. We are just as valid as someone reading a book by a pool, and most of the time, the video game's story quality and meaning is much deeper than the shallow romance novel or government spy thriller that people are churning through at the beach and at the pool, but no one criticizes the reader. In fact, they're rewarded for how many books a year they can read. And if I post how many video games a year I play, I get a woof. Well, your family could use a lot more of your attention. You know what I mean? So that's it. It's the reason why we started this podcast. Video games are relevant. They matter. They're meaningful. They are awesome. And they should not be looked down on by the masses. And I feel like this is a huge step forward in that. I understand that millennials are growing up and video games are becoming more mainstream than they ever have been before. It's awesome and I love it. The Mario movie was a proof of how awesome video games can be and what they are. Over $1 billion made is fantastic, and I cannot wait for the Gran Turismo movie coming in August, and I will watch it and I will report back here when I get there. Last bit of news, there was a Black Panther game announced. I don't know if y'all caught this, but EA has announced that a Black Panther game is in development at a recently established internal studio, Cliffhanger Games. Tom Ivan over at Video Games Chronicles writes, as previously reported, the studio was formed in 2021 and is led by Kevin Stevens, who was the boss of Warner's Monolith during the development of Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor and Middle-earth Shadow of War. In addition to leaders from those games, Cliffhanger's team includes veterans of franchises including Halo, God of War, and Call of Duty, according to EA. The original third-person single-player Black Panther game is being developed in collaboration with Marvel Games. We want our game to enable players to feel what it's like to be worthy of the Black Panther mantle in unique story-driven ways, and we want Cliffhanger Games to empower everyone on our team as we collaborate to bring this amazing world to life. We're still in early development with a long road ahead, but we know the foundation to any great story is to build an experienced team with diverse voices and perspectives, and that's what we want to build, especially with a superhero as important as Black Panther. EA announced last year that it had struck a deal to make several new games based on Marvel properties, beginning with an Iron Man title from Dead Space Remake and Star Wars Squadrons developer Motive Studios. We're dedicated to delivering fans a definitive and authentic Black Panther experience, giving them more agency and control over their narrative than they have ever experienced in a story-driven video game. Wakanda is a rich superhero sandbox, and our mission is to develop an epic world for players who love Black Panther and want to explore the world of Wakanda as much as we do. I'm excited about this. That's awesome. I love the I loved Shadows of Mordor. I haven't played Shadows of War yet, though I have a copy of it. I feel like what translates well from those titles, from someone who's led those titles, would be the amazing like animation and world building and kind of open world traversal, and how good and quality the game and the combat and the mechanics felt. I know EA was doing a whole bunch of nasty things with the microtransactions in Shadow of War and the Nemesis system. The Nemesis system was awesome and very unique, but it was leveraged to try to make money instead of actually being a good system in the second game. But the first game, it was awesome. Like, random enemies could be upgraded to become chieftains, and then you kill them again, and they could be like war chiefs above that. And it's really cool. They can have vengeance on you, and it kind of keeps track of how if you die by the enemy, their stats change, and like you kill them, and like you'd be replaced. Like, there's always a ruler in place, so like the roles always get replaced by the lower, and so you can see like enemies tier up. And it was really, really cool and really unique to have like, and you could have vendettas and like rivalries with specific orcs if you're like intend to like dying by them constantly. Anyway, the lead on a Black Panther game that did that sounds awesome. Single player. Give me third person, give me some sort of sandboxy, open worldy type exploration and run through with like quests and such. I think we got something awesome on our hands. I'm excited. So Cliffhanger is a new studio, as the article had said, so they don't have a pedigree of anything yet. It just consists of veterans from Halo, God of War, etc. So I'm excited. It sounds awesome. So where am I at? What am I doing? Retro Talk. That was the last of the news stories. So I wanted to actually tie in a news story about retro gaming in my retro gaming segment, and this actually kind of made me a little sad, but the Video Game History Organization, Video Game History Foundation, posted an article on July 10th by Kelsey Lewin. Classic video games. A new study reveals most classic video games are completely unavailable. The Video Game History Foundation, in partnership with the Software Preservation Network, has conducted its first ever study on the commercial availability of classic video games, and the results are bleak. 87% of classic video games released in the United States are critically endangered. Imagine if the only way to watch Titanic was to find a used VHS tape and maintain your own vintage equipment so that you could still watch it. And what if no library, not even the Library of Congress, could do any better? They could keep and digitize that VHS of Titanic, but you'd have to go all the way there to watch it. It sounds crazy, but that's the reality we live in with video games. A $180 billion industry, while the games and their history disappear. For accessing nearly 9 in 10 classic games, there are a few options. Seek out and maintain vintage collectible games and hardware. That's me, I do that. Travel across the country to visit a library, or piracy. None of those options are desirable, which means that most video games are inaccessible to all but the most diehard and dedicated fans. And that's pretty grim. This is where libraries and archives should come in. Anyone should be able to play or be able to explore, research, and play classic video games in the same way that they can read classic novels, listen to classic albums, and watch classic movies. But outdated copyright laws are preventing institutions like ours from doing our jobs. So the study was to get expanded exemptions for libraries and organizations preserving video games, which are currently far more limited in their ability to preserve books, movies, and audio. That's the goal of the study. So how the study will help: the video games industry's main lobbying group has successfully argued to the U.S. Copyright Office that the industry already does enough to preserve its own history commercially, and that additional protections per preservation institutions would hurt their bottom line. We proved them wrong. The industry has actually only managed to make 13% of its history available, and it's unlikely to get better. So, there you go. That stinks. 87% of classic games not in release are considered critically endangered. So, this means like you want to play Final Fantasy III, the NES port from Japan. It's Japanese only. We got a DS port later in the United States. Yeah, DS games, like even that. Like, where, if you didn't have a Nintendo DS, where could you go get access to a DS game? You couldn't. It's not around. It's not a thing. It requires specific hardware. You have to go buy it. You have to go find a DS. You have to go find the game and play it. Or you could pirate it. And piracy is not a viable option. So what the study was conducting here was, how can you play a classic game? How many games are available today on like legal consumer platforms? So take a game like Super Mario World. You can play that on your Nintendo Switch online service. So you don't need to have a Super Nintendo. You don't need to pirate it. There's a means with which you could spend money and get it now and play it on current stuff. And so I guess if you look at like GOG, Good Old Games on PC, on the PC side of things, they have a huge library, and they've done extensive work to grab classic PC games, scan all the booklets, the box art, and like come up with these amazing packages with like the soundtrack and sell everything digitally. So you can still get those games like legally. So an old PC game like Blood, you could go find on GOG and download it digitally and play it. So like that checks the box. Like it's preserved. You don't have to pirate it. So only 13% of all video games made are available by legal means. That's sad. And I mean, I have this whole collection here in my house because of that fact. Like if I could get access to everything on modern platforms, it would significantly reduce the need that I have for the original hardware, because I love being able to play these games and I want to experience them when they came, as they were when they had come out. So I have a CRT TV. I've got original hardware, and I know that there's no game that's outside of my ability to play, except unless I don't have the console, or it costs money for these things. And it all started with like my whole life. We never got rid of everything. I did go through a phase where I was trading stuff in, like I said, to scrimp and save and make room for stuff. But yeah, I went on a tangent about my own collection there. But the Video Game History Foundation, extremely important. If you want to like donate to them or like participate in their world, their life, you can go to gamehistory.org and you can check them out and what they're doing. I hope that makes changes. I hope the goal of the study is successful, and I hope that video game preservation is taken a little more seriously from government agencies like it is for books and albums and such. So let's do that. Let's work to handle those things. All right, so now we're going to go into my Video Game of the Year book. Last week I went through 1986 was the year I was born, through 1991. I wanted to cover 5 years there, and now I'm going to cover 1991 through 1995. So 1991, the rival game of the year, Sonic the Hedgehog. Bounce into enemies, race through looping levels, and save captured animals with style and speed. I am reading again, and you guys might be wondering what I'm reading. Jordan Miner wrote a book called Video Game of the Year, and Jordan Miner is lives in New York City, and he has freelanced articles for prominent gaming outlets. He's currently an editor on the apps and gaming team at PC Mag. He made this book, and I thought it was kind of cool. A nice little tidbit through history that's not tied to like Jeff Keighley's Game Awards or any of the big famous ones. It's kind of just like someone who's in the know going through the years of games. So go check the book out if you haven't. That's what I'm going to be reading from. So this one, of course, 1991 is going to be Sonic the Hedgehog. Like, it's the game of the year. When Sega came for Nintendo, it came for the king. It couldn't afford to miss. Thanks to the NES, Nintendo had become the new Atari, the one name that stood for all video games. There were plenty of great third-party games, so Nintendo's first-party catalog wasn't the only reason to buy the system, but Nintendo ruled the industry with an iron fist and dictated strict terms. The Nintendo seal of quality may have protected gamers from other ET catastrophe, but it forced publishers to play by Nintendo's conservative rules if they wanted to get just one of their games on the NES. What choice did they have? And of course, we have the Sega Genesis, and that whole story of Sega spinning off and not following Nintendo's rules and creating a console and a game that could stand on its own as a Mario rival, and that is Sonic the Hedgehog. So, great game, super fast-paced compared to Mario. Had like a awesome 80s rock kind of soundtrack. I mean, think of like Michael Jackson, who did work on Mario or Sonic 3 later on, but like kind of that vibe of, yeah, it was really good. I love Sonic the Hedgehog on the original Sega, 1, 2, 3, Sonic and Knuckles, and it all started with Sonic 1. So I don't really know what else to read through here because it would take me forever to read. But Sonic the Hedgehog was the total package, exactly the game Sega needed it for it to be for the Genesis to give Nintendo its first serious competition ever. Sorry, TurboGrafx 16 fans, but Bonk's Adventure was no Sonic the Hedgehog. So bundled with the Genesis hardware, Sonic the Hedgehog sold more than 15 million copies at the height of Sonic's success. It really did feel like Sega would achieve its goal of replacing Nintendo as the market leader. Sonic made Mario sweat. Sonic makes the impossible look easy. Console wars will never again reach the heated heights of Super Nintendo versus Sega Genesis. Today's consoles are a lot more interchangeable, and swearing loyalty to a brand is a lot less cute. Yes, Sega did technically lose. The SNES ultimately outsold the Genesis, and Sega's subsequent consoles performed much worse. But all those consoles hosted so many amazing games that you won no matter which one you owned. Sonic faced his own troubles following his Genesis glory days, going into the 3D era, and the book goes on to kind of give a little bit of a history there. But, yep, Sonic the Hedgehog for 1991. I don't fault him for that choice at all. 1992, another landmark game. I mean, the cool part about the 90s is like every single year, there's some genre-defining game that had come out because nothing had come out before it. So like they're super foundational decade for gaming across all genres, and this one is no exception. Wolfenstein 3D, the shooter of the year. Shoot your way through Nazi strongholds as one-man army, BJ Blazkowicz, before coming face-to-face with Adolf Hitler himself. Of course, this is like the foundational first-person shooter. Close your eyes and imagine a video game. Back in the day, maybe you'd picture a bunch of pixels, but now chances are you're staring down the sights of a virtual gun. You see Battlefield, Call of Duty, Halo. You're thinking of a first-person shooter. 2D games work best by giving players character to control like a spunky little mascot, but when games moved into 3D, suddenly they could show us an entire world around us, seen through our own eyes, with nothing separating us from the action. Just give us a gun and show us what to shoot. For better or worse, first-person shooters dominate modern gaming. Wolfenstein 3D, the game of the year that introduced FPS genre to the masses, won the war before it even started. So, of course, Wolfenstein, the foundation for things, and that had went on to create the legends of like Doom. That's id Software. It spawned an entire genre of first-person shooters. The biggest deal here was how you could make games trick you into thinking that it was 3D, right? So Mario, side-scrolling platforms, side-scrolling kind of 2D view, but with the 3D aspect here at Wolfenstein 3D, it was kind of a trick to like use different types of scaling, and you can do this with like art, that you hang on your wall. It looks 3D by how perception is changed, and so this was like the very beginning of starting to enter into the world of 3D games where stuff would move around you that wasn't static. So it wasn't like Myst where like the screens are pre-rendered. It was actually like you could walk through halls and turn right, turn left, and look down doors and corridors, and like you couldn't really aim up and down. You could only just turn left and right, but really, really cool, unprecedented stuff. I love it. 1993. Again, a genre-defining game. And this is NBA Jam, the slam dunk of the year. Flaming basketballs, over-the-top announcers, bonkers secret characters make this 2-on-2 basketball game featuring real players performing unreal stunts, the quintessential arcade sport experience. And there's the genre, arcade sports, right? This went on to spawn like Blitz, NFL Blitz, if you remember that. It had attitude. It's kind of like, and he writes here, Midway may have had great success with Mortal Kombat's ultraviolence, but the publisher's similarity, gory shooter Total Carnage didn't do nearly as well. So for the next arcade project, Midway designer Mark Tumel proposed a game with mass appeal, a game everyone would instantly understand, a game based on a sport already watched and beloved by millions. Midway had previously developed a basketball game called Arch Rivals in 1989, but for this new project, the company went straight to NBA for some official prestige. The league needed some convincing, and Midway's bold pitch included more than a few impossible promises, but the team got the license to make a branded NBA product, similar to how Mortal Kombat digitized live-action actors to make its realistic graphics. This game scanned real-world basketball footage and slapped famous faces from the 1992-93 season onto the bodies, and make sure to turn the big head mode on. NBA Jam was the real deal, except it wasn't. It was better than real. 2-versus-2 basketball, and you could jump across the whole hoop, like whole court. You have turbo mode. Like, it was super fun. I remember playing this on Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, arcades, everywhere I could. And I'm not even a basketball fan. I watched Space Jam, so I'm familiar with the names. And I absolutely love NBA Jam. It's a great game. I highly recommend, if you haven't played it, to go check it out and have a good time with it. So, 1993, NBA Jam, the sports arcade genre. And in 1994, not necessarily a genre-defining game, but definitely a big update to a super popular one, and this is Super Street Fighter II Turbo, the next round of the year. Pick a fighter and use their unique blend of offensive, defensive, and special moves to defeat your opponent before they defeat you in this turbocharged update featuring bonus characters, new moves, and faster speed options. Y'all, audience listening to me right now, back in 1994, there was no internet. no console connected to the internet. There may have been a very, very primitive internet, but no consoles were connected to it. No arcade machines and cabinets were connected to it. And you couldn't just send a software update to patch your game. If you wanted to hear fan feedback after many, many years of entering your game into tournaments and getting official feedback from critics and make changes to your game and update them with new things, you had to print an entirely new cartridge, a new circuit board, a new arcade cabinet. You had to completely re-release the game, and that's what this is here. Gamers from communities, now I'm reading, and some games are entire communities unto themselves. For a genre all about beating your opponent senseless, nothing brings people together like fighting games. Invite aspiring world warriors to your arcade tournament and watch them tear each other apart out of love. The competition to stay compelling, it needs to evolve and change and keep pace as players get better and smarter. The game needs to be just as alive as its most dedicated fans. Street Fighter II could have rested on its laurels, content in the knowledge that it created the fighting game genre as we know it. Instead, like a dedicated athlete, it kept training, kept growing stronger, and kept surpassing every challenge. Super Street Fighter II Turbo is the next step on the journey. As I alluded to earlier, this was monumental in game updates. Like, how can you patch games? How can you make them better? How do you evolve with your crowd, your fans? How do you grow with them as they get better, smarter? How do you introduce new balance to the characters, the fighters, as exploits are discovered and found, or glitches? You got to close it all up. You got to make it more fair. You got to make it more even. And so that's what happened with Super Street Fighter 2. The whole story here, of course, is very long, and I will not read ad nauseum to all of that, but that's pretty sweet. How you can see the video game industry communities influence a game. And for my last game of the year, 1995, arguably probably the best platformer on Super Nintendo, hands down. And that's just platformer, not best game, best platformer. 1995's game of the year is Donkey Kong Country 2. The illusion of the year. Control agile chimp Diddy Kong and his high-flying partner Dixie Kong as they run, swing, jump, and barrel blast through faux 3D side-scrolling levels trying to rescue Donkey Kong. Graphics aren't everything. Games need to be good, not just look good. Still, awesome visuals can make a game much better. Who doesn't like to look at cool stuff? We don't just begrudgingly accept expensive upgraded next-gen consoles. We eagerly anticipate them because they give us games more beautiful than ever before. As we shifted away from 16-bit machines toward consoles capable of truly 3D experiences, games were about to sport their greatest graphics yet, a leap forward so seismic that no other generational transition can compare. However, before Nintendo pulled the trigger, the company reminded us why it's best at finding creative solutions for old technology, not riding the bleeding edge of new technology. Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy Kong's Quest, proved you could still teach an old ape new tricks. I said the title wrong, and I just want to highlight here real quick. It's Diddy's Kong Quest. Like, it's a play on words. It's Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's, apostrophe S, Kong Quest. So it's the conquest of Diddy. It is not Diddy Kong's journey. Important distinction to make. And I learned that in my adult life way too late. I thought it was pretty funny. The original Donkey Kong arcade game, I don't want to read about that. I want to talk about having a game that at least looked 3D could hopefully keep the aging Super Nintendo from looking too obsolete. Rare had already shown impressive technical skill and great loyalty to Nintendo in the NES days, so Nintendo decided to buy 49% of the company and lock down this promising silicon graphics tech. All we needed now was a game to show off these graphical marvels. It was time for Donkey Kong to get back in the swing of things. Most of what follows ultimately applies to all three games in the Donkey Kong Country trilogy, released from 94 to 96. But in the spirit of graphics not being everything, let's highlight the best playing game in the bunch, and that's Donkey Kong Country 2. Nimble controls and creative levels make it a 2D platformer worth playing no matter how it looks. Mario would play this game and feel proud of how far his original enemy had come. The visuals are also quite special. The Donkey Kong Country series looks absolutely incredible. Blurry 90s CRT TVs do retro games a wonderful favor by smoothing out their jagged edges, something developers took knowing advantage of at the time since there were no alternatives. Donkey Kong Country characters honestly look like Pixar cartoons hopping around on the screen. Even if you didn't know all the computer wizardry happening behind the scenes, you looked at Donkey Kong Country and you could see something futuristic, looking with depth and volume, something from the real world. The game's lush, moody jungles come alive with more atmosphere than the pleasant but plastic Mario universe. David Wise's legendary soundtrack brings you to a dreamy trance state that you didn't think was possible in a Donkey Kong game. Donkey Kong Country 2's hypnotic sticker brush symphony track could be classified as a controlled substance. Haha, funny joke there, author. But Donkey Kong Country 2 went above and beyond its original purpose. It delivered a great game with fake 3D visuals on your Super Nintendo so amazing you'd ignore the real 3D visuals on the PlayStation. All these years later, Donkey Kong Country 2 remains beautiful inside and out. So that is the end of the retro segment. I could not agree more. Donkey Kong Country 2 is an absolutely legendary game, and I don't know where you can play it off the top of my head without doing any research, but go play that game. So, hey, look at that. I landed on an hour. I usually like to go between 45 minutes to an hour, so thank you for hanging out with me here this week. Sorry for the delayed release of the episode. I hope to get another episode out at midnight on for Monday next week. We will see what happens. I'm doing a birthday celebration with my family. T-Bone and Mai's birthday are 10 days apart, and right in the middle is a weekend, so we're going to go celebrate together. We will do our video game exchange. I will probably report here what that looks like and what things we exchange and what we receive. And obviously, I can't spoil what I'm giving to T-Bone for his birthday, but I will come back and talk about it next week. So I hope you have a great one. Thanks again for joining me. If you want to give any feedback, thoughts, comments, concerns, and ideas, you can find me at 80bitpodsmash.com, 80bitpodsmash.com. That's a landing website with links to all of my socials. There's a link tree there. You can find RSS feed links to all of the audio platforms of your choice: Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, etc., Google Play, Apple Podcasts, and you can find me there. So thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next week.